Was there something that happened like maybe early childhood which inspired your entrepreneurial journey?
No, I don't think I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I was.
How do you think about profitability of startups in construction tech? Where should it come, if at all?
Openly, nPlan is not, but that's because we choose to invest, close to 100% of our revenue.
Okay, as a co-founder and CEO, what are your thoughts on leadership and team buildings?
Leadership is largely about making sure you feel that your team feels like you.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Groundbreakers, where we reveal the stories behind the most successful founders and operators in AEC technology, from exits in the multiple hundreds of millions through to the struggles of building in a resilient industry. We've got you covered. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode. Dev, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, I'm just very curious because when we was doing some research on you, we saw that you had made some appearances on Sky News, Bloomberg, those kind of things. So, how does someone get a gig on one of those shows?
Well, you do more podcasts like this, and this is how you get there. It was. I'm not really sure how. They in all cases they came to us, and I think maybe the how in that is do important, valuable work, and you will be found.
Build and they will come.
Yes, I hope.
We were just chatting about this outside, by the way. But I was curious. Did they make you wear makeup?
Yeah, and embarrassingly, yes. Yes, the first time I've had makeup on, mostly to make my forehead not become a light bulb
like mine
in itself, just reflecting off the enormous lights that they have inside those studios.
Jeez, like these?
Like this. So that is probably like 10 times bigger and brighter than this. It's shocking how much light.
Come on, George, we need to get some other stuff here.
Yeah. Equipment upgrade needed. We want to be like the Bloomberg. No, anyway, Dev, yeah, all seriousness. So yeah, co-founder of CEO of nPlan. So we'll get into nPlan, but before that, was there something that happened like maybe early childhood which inspired your entrepreneurial journey?
I feel like most people say yes to this question, and in my case, no. I don't think I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I was one. So it wasn't. I'm not doing some lifelong dream of mine. I kind of am doing this role because I felt like I had no other role in the world that I could do that would fulfill me. So it's like entrepreneurship out of a lack of choice, perhaps, is my story, which doesn't sound very inspiring, right? It's just like I have nothing else in the world I can do, so let's just start a company now. Yeah, well, maybe the
some people would say that this is how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I hear a lot of like stories of
selling
dreams. Like, I woke up in the morning, I just saw the dream, and I was like, "Why do I have a dream, man?" I'm not saying, I don't know. My version is just like, oh shit, I can't go work for the organizations I've worked for in the past. I crave and still crave making impact, right? It's like a drug. You start doing it and you realize that's your calling, and you can't make it. It's just really extraordinarily hard to make impact as someone in the mid or the lower part of a very large corporation, right? It's just hard. So entrepreneurship is that channel that I found where you can make an impact in the world, and it's your destiny to make it happen, right? And that I felt like I got snippets of impact in my previous careers, and I was like, man, that's the stuff that I like. I like doing that. How do I just do that now? There were lots of bits that I did not like, right?
Yeah.
But that was the one that I was like, I just want to zoom that one and make that my whole life.
Was it like a specific time or a specific company that you worked for that you kind of decided, okay, that's probably enough. I really need to like shift my focus into more entrepreneurship or like doing my own stuff?
Yeah, it was my time in government. I was an advisor to Theresa May when she was the Prime Minister in the UK. And I led the emerging technology strategy for the UK, which specifically under that kind of big top level banner, I led the UK's work on setting the strategy for AI in the country. This is in 2016 and 2017 when it was far less in vogue than it is right now, but it was crucial building blocks that we still see in practice today. Many of the things that we talked about and I wrote down in the strategies we published in 2017 are real things that still exist miraculously, prime minister after prime minister, and that was like the sign of impact, right? You're just like, I'm doing work that influences the lives of millions of people here. I'm also doing work or being, part of a system that I don't work very well in, which is politics and government. So I saw the thing that I loved, which is the do work with impact. And I also saw the bits that I don't love, which is politics in a workplace, right? And so cancel that part out and hopefully stayed with it.
Leave what you like, yeah?
Was there, from that report, so just to actually pick this up, is you co-authored the UK Government AI Review alongside Professor Dame Wendy Hall and Jerome Presenti, and has published part of the industrial strategy in 2017. So we're in the midst of AI at the minute. Was there anything in that report back, what are we now, 7-8 years ago, that is like does a lot of it still stand, or has it just been completely blown out?
Was it an innovation at that time?
Oh, yes. So I think there are three parts that still remain very true today. And it's like, thank God we didn't just blow this thing over in 2016, 17. One was skills. Like there are people in the world that you need to bring into this country. And so making sure the immigration system allows these people to show up quickly. So we made those changes. The second change was setting up government as a policy unit. So making sure government as a buyer has a unit that could actually think about the subject very deeply. So that's called the Office of AI, which exists and has plenty of people inside it doing fantastic work today. And the third, probably the most important one, but it's like really hard to like pinpoint what it actually did. And there's probably some analyst somewhere now that has done it, which is make sure there's more than enough funding in the space. And that's fundamental research funding. So you're able to work on the gnarliest, weirdest problems as an incredible university base, which is what we have in the UK, and work on these problems with government funding. So make sure the government is funding what will at the time have been perceived as kind of lunatic endeavors. But those lunatic endeavors are not considered lunatic anymore. They're just like, oh, thank God we're not left behind in that race.
Yeah, I use that every day now.
Yeah.
So that was 2016, 2017. And it was before that you were at Shell, which I think had a big impact on your career choice moving forward to nPlan. You said you worked, when we spoke previously, you worked on a lot of construction projects. So tell us about Shell.
Yeah, spent a decade with them, lived on 4 different continents in probably the most god-awful parts of the world, which is, I guess, where you find oil and gas. You don't get to work in nice, cushy offices. And I was on the pointy end of delivering large projects for the group, from design, early construction, commissioning, startup. And I saw the problem firsthand, right? I saw how hard it was to deliver projects to time and budget. I was on the receiving end of the grief when you don't deliver to time and budget. And I was like, man, it's not like we're not trying. Mm-hmm. We're all, I think, relatively clever people, working really, really hard. And at the end of the day, we still can't get it right. And why is that, right? And that kind of thought process of going back and just questioning, why do we find it so hard? Is it me? Is it someone else? Is it the whole system that's against us? And that was kind of like the inspiration behind what we now do at nPlan.
Mm-hmm. So after Shell, what happened?
So it was Shell first. Then I went into the government, and then from government out and started nPlan. So it was saw the problem first, saw how powerful AI could be in government, and then nPlan is the genesis of go solve a really wicked problem with an incredibly powerful technology.
Yeah. So so how did the idea come about? I'm assuming it's something to do with your time at Shell working on these projects, and like you touched upon getting so much grief and stick for working hard.
So I have a saying. It's not my saying. So someone else must have come up with it. Ideas are worthless, or your ideas are worthless. What you seek is the insight from others. And what that means is it didn't really matter what I thought. What I had to go do was figure out why does everyone else think that this is such a complex problem? And what I did, over the course of 12 weeks or so, Alan, my co-founder, who's been on the show, went and interviewed hundreds of people. We just sent thousands of LinkedIn messages, cold emails, text messages, WhatsApp. I mean, just like anything
Nice.
you can do to find people that manage construction projects. And ask them, why is it hard, man? Like, what's your struggle here? And the insight we landed on was we don't have enough experience to really be able to foresee what might happen to our project, no matter what, right? So I was like, that's wild. That means no matter how much money you have, no matter how good you think your team is, they never have enough experience. And I was like, that's crazy, right? That means what we think of as development, career development or training or education in this industry is kind of broken. It means that we can't teach people fast enough to know enough about construction projects such that all these people have enough foresight to be able to prevent problems from manifesting. Right? And that's the task of the project managers, to be able to say, this is how we're going to stitch the whole thing together. And in our experience, collectively as a project team, here's what we think could go wrong or could be improved about this project based on previous projects we've built.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
But you've not seen enough of the world as a single human being or as a team of people to really be able to put all of the things together and say, there's a little chance that weird thing over there might happen. And the story was when I worked on a project in Russia, off the coast of Russia, actually, on Sakhalin Island, north of Japan. Not a friendly place to be. And a bridge collapsed 200 kilometers from site. Right? It was the only access road to the site, and a bridge collapsed. And I promise you that event was, when it happened, it felt worse than the COVID pandemic, because we're just like, we don't even know how we're going to get food on here. Forget logistics. Forget like how we're going to get materials. I couldn't care less about materials. How are we going to get food? You can't helicopter to a frozen across this kind of distance. And then someone came to the project site and was like, oh, yeah, this happened to me somewhere else. Like, where were you when we were planning this project? Where were you?
Yeah.
Like when we were thinking about how to build this thing, and you were just not there to give us the advice. I mean, you're now here, thankfully.
How did you get here?
Not on the bridge.
Not over the bridge.
Lots of people making phone calls.
So you're saying that as people don't have enough experience means that every project is unique because of the location, because of the structures or architecture of it. And we don't have anything to, we don't, because of the fact that everything is different every single time, collectively as humans, as one human, you don't have enough experience to tackle this from every single angle.
It's known as availability bias. We only know what we know.
Yeah.
There are two other biases that also are absolute nemesis of how we think. The second is optimism bias. So every single project team we meet think they're going to be the next best project team. And that's really good from a morale and drive the team. But God, is it really bad when you have to think about what's the realistic outcome we're headed towards here. And then the third is my favorite one, which is called salience bias.
I was asking for an explanation of this, actually.
Salience. Yeah, salience is an awesome topic. Salience is the ability for the human brain to remove what it perceives to be noise. So we take, for example, this environment we're in. I mean, we're in a studio, so it is very silent in here. But if there was other noises coming through in the studio, despite all that other noise, our brain will tune it out and we'll only focus on what we can hear and what's important. And that little coughing sound we just had. So what's happening is if you take that onto projects, what happens is we tend to only really focus on the things that we think are important. I'm an engineer, so I love thinking about the physicality of construction. When is the steel structure going up? When are we installing the vessels, right? That's what I and many of my colleagues used to love thinking about and are good at thinking about these things as well. What's the tunnel boring machine going to perform at, right? Says so many tunneling projects in the UK or around the world. What we don't love thinking about are the things that we have cancelled out. What's going to happen? How are we going to approve documentation? What's the process for electrical systems testing? These are what become the salient items on the project. They become silent. And those silent items are the things that come and bite us. And the data proves it, right? Like over 750,000 projects nPlan has now analyzed. We can see overwhelmingly the largest contributors of project delay is non-physical construction, also known as administration. And it's like, shit, the thing that goes wrong on projects is not how fast can you drill a hole. It's how fast can you get the paper after you've drilled the hole to the person that has to approve it to say that the hole has been drilled, right? And it's like, that's the stuff that whacks us in the face because we just cancel it out. We just don't like thinking about it.
Can I throw another bias your way that might have an impact on you?
Yeah.
Planning fallacy?
Yeah. So planning fallacy is not a bias. It's just the reality of how we, of the complexity upon which we have to operate in, right? But yeah, solid.
The
planning fallacy is essentially like we just grossly underestimate how long things take to complete. So you may say like, I'll be with you. Your perfect example. 10 minutes, half hour later. Hey, Martin, you've just been bitten by the planning fallacy.
Okay.
Hey, Dev, just one step back. So you mentioned Alan as your co-founder. Where did you guys meet?
We met at Entrepreneur First. It's a sort of startup incubator, except you just show up as individuals. They chuck you in a room. It's sort of like Love Island, but for creating companies.
They film it?
They should. I think they make a lot of money with a TV show in there. But yeah, we met in there. I sort of like attracted Alan by the complexity of the problem, and he was like, "Man, that is really hard." And he loves solving very hard problems. You give him an easy one, he'll be like, you just get bored. But this is absolutely wicked in that the first 3 years of nPlan, 80% of the people we met said what we're doing is impossible. You'll never get the data. Even if you can get the data, you'll never be able to learn from it because every project is unique. And even if you learn from it, it'll never be able to pick up risks that happen on projects because there's just so many variable risks. And it took us 3.5 painful years to prove that all wrong, right? That we have the data. It does actually understand unique projects and it does correctly pick up risk.
Do you think that incubators are a good place for aspiring founders to go with hindsight maybe?
Yes, if you do not really know how to run a startup or you don't really know who you want to work with. So Entrepreneur First is good because you don't even have to have an idea. You don't have to have a team or an idea to join. all you have to be is ambitious,
Mm.
which sounds like a pretty easy
Think to have.
threshold to cross. But they do test the living
Yeah.
daylights out of you on whether you have the right mindset for that. But so first time founders, I guess it's a good starting place, because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I still don't know what I'm doing, but
You're giving it a go.
giving it a go. Yeah. If I was doing this for the second time, I probably would not go through it again.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Should we go to nPlan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So what is nPlan?
nPlan is a software company that forecasts how long construction projects are most likely to take, what could go wrong with them, and then give tools to the teams to help them improve their projects.
Mm-hmm. You earlier mentioned that it took you 3.5 years to gather the data to make it work. Like, what sort of data are you basing your forecasting on?
So the forecasting system relies on historical schedule data. We today process just over 760,000 projects, goes through nPlan. It measures about $1.8 trillion of capital that has already been deployed. And we're reading their schedule files, what was planned to happen on a project, and then what actually happened to the project. And the difference between what you plan to do and what you actually do is what you learn. That's the basic fundamental of how we people gain experience. We plan something and then we actually do it, and then we learn, right? And then we say, oh, I'm experienced now. I've seen these things happen. And machines or our algorithms work in the same way. They go see what was planned and what actually happened.
Mm-hmm. So where is the data from? Is it from your customers that you work with? They share it and then you analyze the data for them, provide them with help on their projects?
Yeah. We tried long and hard to find the data just on the internet. It's not there. 760,000
yeah.
projects.
Yeah. And I guess these are large projects. These are not small projects, not real extensions.
No, not those. Size does vary. We get the data from our customers, from the people that are using nPlan today. And the data is largely representative of a couple of sectors. It's heavy infrastructure, so roads, railways, water systems, grid systems. Then energy, so oil, gas, nuclear, and renewables. And then in third place is commercial estates, so schools, hospitals, very large residential developments. And then things that we don't cover yet, just because we don't have any customers in the area yet, are the residential sector and defense. But anything other than that, we can cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how's the product developed then from, say, day one, what you had in mind, to where we are 7 years later?
Yeah, 7 years on.
And is it one product or more?
It's it's more than one. At the top level, it breaks down into two simple products. So there's probably, like, the evolution has been how important it is for our clients and our users to, as Alan says it, add the egg. So allow me to indulge you in what add the egg means.
I was hoping you'd explain.
Add the egg is, so the backstory is, if you go to the supermarket and you buy ready-made cake mix, and you come home and bake a cake, most of them will tell you to add an egg into that cake mix, along with water and oil sometimes, right?
Yeah.
There is no chemical reason you need to add an egg. We know how to reconstitute an egg in powder form. We've known this for years.
Is it not
years
for
and years.
consistency?
No, it has nothing to do with the consistency either. The reason the recipe requires you to add an egg is ownership. You feel more like a chef when you add an egg into a cake mix than if you do not add an egg
So
into the cake.
I eat all of those calories because of the ownership?
Well, yeah. So what the cake mix manufacturers are trying to do is trying to elicit a reaction in you that makes you feel like you are a baker or a chef. And that, in theory, should make you feel more proud to make more of them and give them to your friends. And say, I made a cake. It's like, well, you actually made the cake, but okay. And one of the critical games that is being played in there is the egg, right? So in our world, to nPlan, what we found was that if you just tell the project team, here's everything about the future of your project, goodbye, their ownership is very low.
Yeah.
They don't own that answer, right? And so how do you get the project team to add an egg into the super forecasting that we're doing such that they feel like it's their project's forecast that they own and they will now take action on? Because at the end of the day, if a project team doesn't do something with the information we're generating, it's kind of useless or a waste of money, right? And so add the egg is this kind of like product development philosophy we've had for many years now, which is bring the project team into the forecasting engine, which is from a design and technology perspective is insanely complicated because it is a black box doing most of the process or all of the processing, right? Schedule in, black box thinks about it, black box spits out what it thinks is risky. So how do you add eggs to black boxes is another complexity, but we found ways for project teams to like play with it. And that's probably the kind of, we never really realized it until people were using it, and then now it's a core part of a development philosophy. You asked about products.
Yeah, but on the egg side, so egg in baking, you said it doesn't have any impact on the outcome, does it?
It does.
It does?
But I'm saying you don't, chemically,
Okay.
if you ignore the reasons for doing it, you could just put an egg in there in powder form and add water to it.
Oh, got you.
And it would do the same function as a live egg.
Fair, okay.
This really wants to go and make a cake now.
No, because I thought when you give this on the project example, when you have people involved in risk management and they take your data, look at this data and trying to manage it somehow, they have enormous impact, I guess, on the project outcome by using this data. So this
Correct.
is the egg, right? Which is
No,
no.
that's not the egg. The egg is the user, the risk manager, the project manager will say, I'm worried about X. Can you tell me how my concerns would manifest on this project?
Okay.
That's them giving us something, right? We actually have all of the answers already. So we could just give you all the answers, but we choose to like hold one back. In this case, the egg is not in the recipe anymore, and you're going to add something to it. So the add is what the project team believe or are thinking about.
Got you.
Was there a second part? You said the product was two parts. It was to add the egg and
Oh no. Sorry, that's the design philosophy of the product is just adding eggs.
Yep.
The products we have at nPlan, there are two headline products.
Yep.
One is we call it Insights or Insights Pro, which is designed for individual projects to go super deep, understand the risk, mitigate the risk, improve project. And the other one is the portfolio product, which exists across projects. So it can analyze tens, hundreds of thousands of projects simultaneously. And that's just for a different audience. It's designed for portfolio leaders and people who sit in the center who manage lots of projects simultaneously.
got you. So curious as to, like, just focusing on the early days, why did you target the scale of project that you did? It's like you mentioned larger infrastructure and the larger, I mean, one obvious answer might be because that's where the money is, but was that the
Not
reason?
really. No, I don't think, well, a little bit, but the main reason we went there is down to maturity. So our first customers, in fact, our first customer ever that paid us money was High Speed 2. And they just had the most acute problem, right? If you think about how difficult it is or was to forecast risk on such a large project, they were just like, if you even have a 2% chance that you can help us, we'll fund it.
So they were already in desperate need
I mean,
to figure it out.
but it's not any large project that is so complex that no team of human beings can actually understand the whole thing has this problem, right? So a house builder, actually that project is well within the grasp of the individual running it. They just know everything because there's just not that many variables.
Yes, the repetition is quite high. Yeah.
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 So it's always been large projects that was were on a focus.
Well, where we started. But today, at a portfolio level, we today are forecasting, I think it's $250 billion of projects
right now
in the system being forecasted. And that's spread over thousands of projects. And yes, some of them are high speed 2, which is, one ginormous one. But they're also like, for example, we work with Anglian Water. And Anglian Water have this enormous tail of hundreds of little bitty projects that you just have to keep doing to keep the water system running. They're not, $1 billion projects. They're $1 million pound project.
So do you think that risk management or predicting the risks is more difficult in any particular vertical in construction, or is it doesn't matter if it's water related project or high-speed railway type of project?
Yeah, that doesn't matter. What matters is the effect of delay and the consequence or pain involved in that. So we're seeing a real uptick in data centers, for example, right? Where the cost of you not finishing the data center to the planned outcome that you have committed to usually far exceeds the construction cost itself. And so it is usually very logical to invest in additional data that can increase your confidence of the outcome you're headed towards.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to get a first customer from inception?
So this is wild. Our first customer was HS2. The first non-paying customer, the first person to give us data was Costain.
Okay.
So shout out to Costain for actually believing in something that didn't exist yet. We were 4 weeks old as a company. We didn't even know that nPlan was called nPlan. We were just like two guys that had an idea. Or we didn't even have an idea. We were just doing this insights, these interviews thing. And someone said, I know the guy. Anyway, he was like, wow, this is crazy. If you guys could do this, I mean, I don't believe it's possible, but if you can do it, that'd be wild. Then we said, well, would you be willing to give us some data so we can try? And he was like, yeah, even, tiny chance that you guys are right, it's worth millions on the other side. And when you kind of hear that, you're like, oh shit, someone's actually investing, right? In this case, it's a FTSE listed company. So it's not like a random sending us all of their schedule data to go build our product with it. And that's, that was 4 weeks in and we had that first bite.
Yeah.
By 6 months, we had six of the 10 largest contractors in the UK all sharing their data with us. 6 months in.
6 months.
Any tips for people? I guess the question is, how did you do it? How did you get that like many people?
Well, so the first was like we were not charging them,
but also tackling the main pain point, right?
Yeah.
Delays.
You're learning about what their pain point is, and then saying, "All right, so if you think that's such a big problem for you, would you be willing to help solve it?"
Yes, and if your value proposition is that I can potentially save you millions of pounds or dollars, then it's different than I can save you 2 hours a day of work for your assistant because they can use my pain point solution, right?
Correct. Yeah, it sells right at the top of the strategic pyramid.
Yes, you're penetrating there. So how long after that then was it before you raised your first round, and what was the makeup of that financing?
So we raised our first round when we were 5 months old. It was quick to do so. I mean, it was 5 months from the date I met Alan. So not even the 5 months from the date the company was formed.
Which year was it?
No, 2018 April. Yeah.
Nice.
So your question was about what was the makeup?
Yeah, like the financing, I guess, who the investors were, how much?
So we raised £2.7 million at something like £11 million valuation or something like that, which for a 5-month-old company was really wild.
That's pretty good.
That's like $2 million a month.
Yeah. It was in 2018. It was a very large seed round. Today, it's like a welcome to the club.
Yeah.
But back then, for the age of the company and the experience of the founders, which was zilch, it was punchy. And all down to the fact that like all our investors felt super compelled by what we were doing and the scale that we were doing it at. So some of our angel investors that we picked that joined us in then and have been with us since, like Demis Abis, the chief executive of DeepMind. We have just the previous CEO of McKinsey, the previous CEO of the largest reinsurance company in the world, Swiss Re. They all joined in our early investments.
Yeah, it's a compelling vision.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
On the product, if I can,
Yeah.
so I can see there's 8 of them on the website right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's like a core of it? And I guess there's some add-ons to it. If you can say something about not maybe each of them, but roughly where you're going with the product.
Yeah, sure. So you're right. Eight products on the website. They will filter into one of 3 categories. Either it's insights, it's single project solution, and there you've basically got a range. You could either do it in a very light, cheap, give us your credit card and you're off to the races. We call that core. Or you want all the bells and whistles that come with nPlan, which is called the pro version, right? And that is just a lot more expensive than the core version. And the same...
So I can say with the core version, someone can just buy a subscription and off you go. You
like
don't have to talk,
$500 a month. And
you don't have to talk to them. They don't have to talk to you.
No, hopefully not. But that's one option. That's, I guess, like for teams that just want to dabble, they're not yet sure how big the problem is, whether they need the help. Then you want to make the technology as accessible as possible. That's very new for us. So we've historically only ever worked with customers that give us, 6 figures and above.
I'm gonna say that's very transparent. I don't think anyone ever is like, 500 per month. Normally, like, we don't talk about, well, not that we don't talk about pricing, but it's price based on project or whatever. Yeah.
That's all right. The other product is really expensive, right? 6 figures and above. So, yeah. And then the same on the portfolio side, like you could do a light version. Again, we don't list that price, but it's still somewhat cheap. And then the pro version of portfolio is expensive, right? 7 figures sometimes. And then the third bucket is what our research team have very recently pushed out. So we call this Schedule Studio. Schedule Studio is like the very cutting edge of what is possible using AI. And one of the highlights from there is the ability to generate a schedule from a scope document.
Mm-hmm.
And this is wild because for the first time ever, this has never even been done in academics, you can give us a scope document and we can generate your schedule for you, skipping what could be weeks and weeks of labor to create a schedule that still won't be very good.
What size of project are we talking about?
Any.
Wow.
And by scope, you mean like, I don't know, 10-page PDF saying this is the plan of what we're trying to do?
Yeah, we did a demo, a live demo a couple of weeks ago where we just went onto a government website, the UK government website, found an RFP for some random hydrogen project, copied and pasted the RFP from the government procurement website into the system, pressed generate, and a couple of minutes later,
Amazing.
an XER file that was logical with durations, with activities, with WBSs, all produced. Now, the reason we're doing this is there's 2 products, under this. There's the ability to generate a schedule and the ability to generate reports. And both these products live in this camp of, we firmly believe that more project teams should spend their time with each other or by a whiteboard than they do behind computer screens. So we're saying the most valuable time, and this is what I remember as well, the most fun, valuable, satisfying time and productive time we had as a project team were when we had whiteboards and we were just thinking about the problem we had in front of us and how we're going to get a hold of it. The least valuable times was when I was writing the monthly report for some executive that I would never get to meet.
Who probably didn't even read it anyway.
Who probably didn't even
just
read
checked it was
and
done.
It's just like, and it's like, no one loves reports. No one loves sitting behind their screen in isolation doing what is somewhat administrative work. So these tools are designed to allow the team to have more time to think about the risks that we're putting forward in front of them with our core product line, right? Which is insights and portfolio. We just want more people thinking about that stuff. We used to hear crazy stories like, we're telling you that these items are a risk on your project. And then the project team would be like, I don't have time to do anything about this.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my God,
This is your answers.
This is so sad. We have to help here.
Yeah.
And that's what these products do.
I wanted to find out, so you said there is $500 subscription for one type of product. And on the other hand, there is six-figure one. What 500 one can do compared to six figures? And what's the scope here?
Yeah. So the $500 one it gets you what we call the driving path of the project. So it visualizes the project's schedule in a probabilistic way. Because if you think about what a schedule is, it is a single depiction of the project team's view of how the project is going to play out. The reality is it's not going to play out in that way. It's going to be different to that. And so we'll generate you what's known as the driving path of the project. So it shows you what you've planned and how it'll probably turn out instead. So it does still use the core of our technology, but does it in a visual, interactive way. So that's, call it, the main thing that comes with that core product.
And they can use it on multiple projects, or is it just dedicated?
That's per project.
Per project.
The Pro version, the expensive one, does that, of course. But then it also then kicks in the recommendation engine. You can dive really deep into individual insights, find out what's driving it, what the causes are, what the recommendations are. It gives you the management plan of like, how are you going to take action on all of this? And the reporting systems. So how are you going to communicate externally? So usually risk and the identification of these things don't live in isolation. Like, you have to be able to interject into other systems, the integrations into these other systems. So basically with Pro, the more expensive product, you're buying an all-in risk management system, right? Where it's going to help you think about risk in a wholly new way and make sure you drive that risk out. That's what the big one is. Whereas if you just look at in the core version, we're not going to commit that much to it, right?
Do you also involve like human capital within the Pro version as well? So there's someone on your side who is...
Yeah, so core is, fill in
yes.
email support, and we'll get back to you in a day. Pro, we'll be there. It's like you'll have a number you can call, and we'll show up. It's what they call the white glove service.
Mm-hmm. How did you come up with the pricing models for these products? Was it like that from the origin, or?
Yeah, it was. So Pro was where the company started, right? We started with this heavy hitting product, and the price was just iteratively we landed on the price iteratively by asking customers what they'd be willing to pay for something. There was an interesting data point that we used early on, which is like, how much are you currently investing into consultants to try and solve this problem for you? And we'll be cheaper than that. As long as we're cheaper than that. And then in the end, we had to demonstrate that we're more effective than that. Then customers are willing to make that investment. And then the core one was, again, it was a kind of like iterative customer testing. It's like, how much would you be willing to pay for something like this? And the magic number 500 showed up. That, this is worth about that much to me, and we'll do it. But I think these things will continually change over time.
Yeah, you never get it right.
And
Never.
And advice for entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out the pricing for the SaaS software in construction?
Two things. One, you're wrong about whatever price you come up with. And two is just iterate as fast as possible with customers. So you're not shortchanging, or you're not being disingenuous. If you ask the customer, hopefully you have some relationship with them. You don't ask the customer if you don't even know who they are. But once they understand what you do and why you're doing it, just to tell them. we're still figuring out what pricing would look like on here. What is fair to you, right? And then iterate on that, because you want some people to say no. If everyone always says yes to your price is too low.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. It's very good. Do you view nPlan as like a SaaS, or is it more of like an outcome-based service that you're providing?
I think you can be both.
Yes.
I think we are both.
Would you say the lower is more of the SaaS, like the $500 per month, and then the Pro would be more of a service?
That's a nice way to like split them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
If I can put my 2 cents into it,
Go.
Is it how it should be in construction tech when you think about other companies innovating in the space? Is it like the core could be, say, SaaS software, and then you add more value by providing like a consultancy and the outcome because it's a risk management really on the project? The question is it the right way? Is it the best way to approach it in construction?
I know. Is it the best way? Probably, but I can't be for sure on this, right? I recently read an article. Patrick Hellerman, who I think was on the show recently, wrote about outcomes as a service, or his colleague perhaps wrote it. And I read it and I totally resonated. In fact, I just messaged him and we're going to speak soon. But the concept is very real. The problem is delivery. It's like, how do you actually deliver an outcome? And the reason I'm hesitating here is because it's tough to give generic advice in such a diverse sector. Like if you're a very niche product that just does one thing for one person, I don't know what outcomes as a service you're going to really think about, right? Just help that person out and you're fine. Get paid for it. But if you're on the other side, like we are, where it's like, the value proposition can sing to so many different stakeholders, it's almost really hard to pinpoint, I can save you 1 hour a week. And then it's so that your typical SaaS selling cycles are much more complicated to execute. So we have no choice but to have an outcome-based, which is where it started from, right? And then you try and venture into the SaaS world. So the honest truth is we're still experimenting with the SaaS world. We're way more on the other side and know how to play in that game than we do in the low-cost, high-volume game.
Mm-hmm.
But each for their own. I think it's like you have to discover where your product fits in the market, and then try and venture to experiment with other options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How? A few more on the product. I was curious. How do you deal with people's like reluctant or skepticism of AI and perhaps the accuracy that it provides as an output? Because in construction, stakes are high, right? One small like hallucination or misinformation from an AI can be quite detrimental.
So 2 things. We rigorously test our systems. In fact, if you look at, it's quite hard to actually look at it, but if you studied our testing philosophy at nPlan, it is probably one of the most rigorous statistical testing methods to understand probabilistic outcomes anywhere in the world in any sector. I think the only ones that beat us are weather forecasters who just,
Huh?
Sorry?
I was going to say, huh? Good weather forecast is very laughing because you never get the weather right. But
Well, but across a large, but this is the interesting thing, right? So across a very large statistical distribution, the weather forecaster is thousands and thousands of times better than the best in class, which is considered a guess, or what your mum thinks, right? Or what you think the weather will be. It's as much as we complain that it doesn't get it bang on, it actually gets it right way more times than it gets it wrong. So in our world, we just rigorously test, and we do that through back testing. So we pretend like it's 2017 again or 2013 again, and we forecast hidden projects, and we see how did our forecast compare to the as-built. And if you do that across 100,000 projects, you're in a statistically relevant sample. If you do it to one project, it's not, it's like if I told you it'll rain on Saturday and it doesn't rain, does that mean my forecast was good or bad? Well,
100% bad.
It's like totally, you'd never know, right? Because you cannot repeat Saturday 100 times. You have to repeat the instance multiple times to get a statistical sample. The second, that was, by the way, just one of the 2 points. The second is that when you're working with a project team, this is again where adding the egg really matters. You accept that certain things we accept and our clients accept that we don't know everything about everything. So we've not built God. So you can tell the algorithm, tell nPlan, hey, that's not a risk. Don't worry about that. We've got it. There was a really cool example where we were flagging a risk of ground clearing, but we did not have the contextual knowledge that team had already surveyed that land, right? It was just like not depicted inside the schedule, which is normal. And so the team told us, like, hey, the team told the algorithm, we've already done these things. And the algorithm listened and they're like, oh, okay, cool. I assumed you were in this other bucket of projects, but you're actually in this other side. Thank you for educating me. I'll correct myself.
Very good.
Is there anything in the data that you collect from customers that should be collected in a better way on their side? Maybe what would improve the quality of data for you guys to forecast it even more accuracy, if there is anything?
Probably the detail and the details available of what they plan to do. So the more detailed and more considered the project plans get, where they really think through how they want to do something and they show it in the schedule, the better our forecaster will behave. It'll look at it and be like, I'm building a really clear image of what you want to do here. It's the sort of same thing as like if you called a consultant and said, please review my project. If you give them a 10 activity schedule and say, review that, they're like, oh, I don't know, even know what the hell you're building.
Yeah.
You give them a really detailed plan that's logical and of high quality, they'll be like, cool, I know what you're doing here. And so to prevent the algorithm from either being losing confidence, which happens when things are overly summarized or have logical error, good quality scheduling matters, which is why we actually have a free tool on our website, schedule.nplan.io, that does schedule quality reviews. There's software products in the market that you have to pay for that do the same thing. And we're like, well, we'll just do it for free, because if everyone just raises their game in scheduling, our forecasting gets better. And if our forecasting gets better, risk management gets better.
Mm-hmm. So you right now are assessing the forecasting based on the text, I guess, right?
On the time, text, relationship, and structure.
Okay, because you mentioned earlier explaining if the detail was more like correct or more elaborated on, the forecast would be much better. Do you think there is a chance in the future to analyze the drawings perhaps and the detail in the drawings, because that would give you probably like...
Working on it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe let's touch on the future then of where you're going with nPlan.
Yeah, so we see a world where project teams are no longer doing the boring, crappy administrative work, and instead are constantly at their fingertips empowered to make good quality decisions, which is just more satisfying. You get paid more. You're just happier when you're doing that kind of work. So imagine the project that doesn't have reports, because reporting is done algorithmically and automatically. So what I need as a report is different to what you need as a report. If we are recipients, we just get personalized reports when we want them with the content we need. So that's one administrative shift that we'll see. And the second is that thinking about scheduling or time or planning will just become so much more intuitive than it currently is. It is so mind-numbing at times to have to think, mind-numbing is not the word to use. It's just mind-bending, perhaps. Yeah, it's mind-bending to have to think about all the thousands of scenarios that can play out on a project. It's just like you could go to hospital with stress having to think about all these combinations and permutations, but instead machines will do this for us, where we can just show up to a project team, to a project site, or in the planning phase and say, here's what I'm considering, build me my options, right? And these machines just go off and build schedules, build scenarios, build mitigation plans, build options for you so that you, as the senior person on the project, can make the decision, right? So we see the role of the project team elevating, where machines, algorithms that we and others are designing will live in, call it the basement, doing the hard analytical, technical work. And the people are taking the decisions, negotiating, arbitrating, the thing that we think humans are best at doing.
So you're saying that you could start from the outcome as someone who is saying, I want the warehouse to be built, which will do X, Y, Z. And then you would could you get the design out of it, like in the future, like from the query like that?
Yeah.
Design me a warehouse?
Yeah, for sure. And where you are making the decisions about should it be design A, B, or C, not I'm now going to spend the next 7 weeks creating design A so that my boss can tell me he actually wants design B.
Yes.
Right? That's what I mean. It's like not fun if you were the person that had to do that work. You'd certainly get paid for a longer period of time, but let's face it, you're just not that productive compared to the guy or girl that had a system that could do this work for them.
I know. I already agreed. Well, I know that our hourly rates are going to zero. I'm happy with that.
I think the opposite. I think they're going to go the other way around. I think they're going to shoot up. I think they're currently too low just because you just have so much crap work you have to do that's just not that valuable. So why would someone pay you a high rate for it, right?
Yes.
I pay my lawyer, this is crazy to even admit, I pay my lawyer 1,100 £1,100 an hour.
Yeah.
What?
An
I'm not
hour.
surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, £1,100 an hour.
I'm becoming a lawyer.
No, the reason
I can send
the
you a
reason
recommendation for cheaper.
the reason that's considered a good market wage is because of how valuable
No.
they can be at, right? The person I'm paying is clearly not the person that's drafting the contracts for me, right? That person is way, 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 way cheaper than that.
Yeah.
But this person is like helping me take critical decisions. And so I will pay £1,100 an hour for that. And I think you will see more project team professionals rising in their value to projects because they're offshoring to machines, that is, the work that is of lower value.
There's something in it.
Something there. Dev, one concern with AI products, especially with like the rise of LLMs and the popularity of AI, is perhaps defensibility of like some maybe incumbent or even powerful AI, like taking over what they do. How does this nPlan deal with that?
Do you mean defensibility of the product or defensibility of the skill?
The product, yeah.
So how defensible is nPlan?
Exactly.
I shouldn't be complacent about this.
We are the best. To the next one.
No. So like, I think defensibility is really interesting because there are two types of products. There are products that use their core architectures to build on top of, where you're a product that's built on top of OpenAI.
ChatGPT plugin, yeah.
Yeah. And that's great because you probably built your product in 1/100th of the time it took to build nPlan, for 1/100th of the price it took to build nPlan. But at the same time, you're going to pay a penalty in the defensibility of that, because what stops someone else from building the same thing? And that, so we've invested more millions than I can admit into building the core architecture of nPlan, which is very difficult to replicate, not just because of the architectures being unique, but because of the requirement to use vast quantities of historical data, to which, yes, others can go and try get, but we've just been doing it for a way longer time and therefore have the largest volumes of this historical data. And this kind of like two-part thing of defensibility generated by experience in handling this data and the architecture that underpins nPlan creates a world where it's quite difficult to just replicate it. But, the grass is always greener on the other side. Like I'm very envious of people that can get a product to the market in the same period of time it takes us to just think about the design of our architecture. Yeah, wins and losses on either side.
I wanted to maybe go back a second and touch on the implementation of reading of drawings, so you can then provide more accurate forecasting. You mentioned that you're working on it. Can you shed some light on like what it would look like, perhaps in the next future to implement this feature, and what can it give to you?
I probably can't say much, given it's still very much a research topic. And not because I'm being cagey, it's actually just that we don't know yet. Right?
Because I don't think there's any solution on the market that allows you to read the drawing and make a sensible conclusion out of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's two problems here. The first problem is triangulation. You can't just look at a drawing on its own. You have to look at the drawing plus others. Like you have to read the basis of design, the engineering specifications, and the drawing together. So there's a triangulation problem to solve for. And then there's an interpretation problem to solve for, right? We've made a lot of headway in the triangulation problem because I said we've got this auto-reporting system which can look at a cost estimate, it can look at a schedule, look at a minutes of meeting, can look at procurement information, which are all really different things, right? Like what procurement documents look like has nothing to do with the cost estimate. But we look at all of these artifacts and we'll triangulate and say, I'm looking across everything and here's what I believe is happening to this project right now or will happen. That's mad difficult technology in itself, and you don't have to standardize your formats. You could just do cost management however you love doing it, and your procurement thing can be however you love doing that. So the first challenge is this triangulation bit. Then the next challenge is drawing interpretation. So drawings just happen to be this, because they're so variant and multimodal, like what I say is a detailed drawing is different to what you say is a detailed drawing. And then what drawing will you actually be interpreting and how does that all connect? This is just part of the technical challenge, right? But we have a 12-person research team at nPlan that are the best by far in the world, that I would say. I'm a little bit biased in saying that, but they've already proven they can solve some of the hardest problems that exist. And so I'm full confidence that they'll crack this one too.
So it's a matter of time and bringing better tech into software. Probably.
It's not even a better tech thing. This is just time.
Time to put
and the time we think it's going to take is always too long. So this is the opposite to what we think can happen. In this domain, this is the only domain that I can think of in the world where the time to market is faster than what everyone is predicting.
Interesting.
Like, no one knew. Even I thought generating a schedule from text is 5 years out, 1 year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the guy building it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told my team, I was like, I don't know if we can spend 5 years building this thing. And they were like, well, we're going to try. We'll see what happens. Right?
So it came out earlier.
It came way earlier than we thought.
So it's a matter of lines of codes that you guys write, really, right? And
I mean, building these types of applications are not really about lines of code. It's far more about the engineering of how the different agents are going to work with one another. There are hundreds of agents, AI agents in the back, that will cooperate with one another to fulfill the function, which is to generate a schedule. Okay? Because if you think about, there's lots of text going on, there's lots of maths in figuring out time, structures. There's hundreds of agents in the background. So designing that agent structure, which is a bit like redesigning your brain for how does your brain think about this problem, if you were to really dissect it as a human being, and then building agents for that, which, yes, in the end there is of course coding that has to happen, but it's less about volumetric coding. It's much more about architecture.
Yeah. Shall we got like 10-15 minutes left. I think it'd be good to go into some questions more about Dev.
Okay.
What's your superpower?
What's my superpower?
So we met with Alan a few months ago, and Alan's superpower is how technical he is and how easily can he explain it to. As in my head, at least, that's what I remember.
My superpower is the ability to simplify, and well, not simplify, but I can navigate almost any problem and articulate how I'm navigating the problem in a way that people can understand, right? So client gives me a absolute curveball of a problem, and I'll play back that problem with a solution quickly. Like, I rarely have to go back, think about it, and come back a day later. I can live whiteboard, figure out almost any problem there is in a way that's understandable, believable, and not actionable.
As a, you want to?
I was going to ask about how you think about sales and go to market, but if you had something else.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about how do you think about profitability of startups in construction tech? Where should it come, if at all?
Yeah, a very popular topic, if I say that. So look, I think there is a today we see more demand for profitability than we have ever seen, at least in the last 8-something years that I've been watching these markets. But I still think it is only reserved for a very particular type of business that has its place in the world. For example, like that company, a company that is built off an OpenAI API, I would expect them to be bloody profitable now, right? And if they're not, then I'm going to ask a bunch of questions like, why not? Whereas, openly, nPlan is not profitable, but that's because we choose to invest, close to 100% of our revenue into R&D. Building these kinds of wild things don't come from, just focusing on profitability. And I think there is a need for venture capital in the market in order to move the market forward. So there are companies that have to use capital to develop products that will in the future become valuable products. And yes, that is sometimes a gravy train that is very difficult to get off. But so for as long as each product that is being generated and pushed into the market is valuable and trades, right, at some market value, you're in the end creating net value in the economy. So complicated answer, but I think both must exist in harmony. You can't just say everyone must seek profitability and everyone must seek, growth at all costs. It's not that.
How about sales and go to market? Any strategies you guys employ?
What works, what doesn't?
What works in sales and marketing?
Any
Nothing.
Hacks?
No, sales and marketing is hard. I think it was one of those things that, if a lesson learned about nPlan, was we kept thinking the hard thing is building the technology. And it is insanely hard to build the technology. We just never really appreciated how hard it is to then sell it. We just thought if they build it and it's amazing, people will just come. Not true. No matter how cool you think it is, people will not just come.
Why? What's the reservation?
It's not a reservation. It's just not the pattern of the buyer. So when I was working on a project, I maybe once or twice in like 10 years did I type into Google how to solve a problem using technology. Insert problem here, software or something like that. It was like, no.
We've always been doing this for the last 25 years. And that's how it has been.
Yeah.
But also it was like very isolated environments where, it's difficult to cut the bullshit out. Like, how do you find out what the real stuff is that can help me, right? Which is why outcomes as a service is a good concept, because people are typically seeking to buy outcomes, not point solutions. So look, sales and marketing is insanely hard. The hardest thing we find is how do you educate a market? We are a category defining solution, meaning there's no category in the world that we neatly slotted into, which has been an opportunity, but also a huge pain. Like, no one knew that a machine could even do these tasks. And so how do you at scale educate? Don't underestimate how hard it is. Don't ever become complacent just because you've got a couple of sales under your belt.
I noticed you guys done some. Recently done a conference. Was that right? About AI. Does you find that helps the sales motion?
Yeah, it's hard to like put direct attribution to these things, but we think that having a constant voice that is authoritative, that is factual, and that is based on real use cases that people can understand and believe is important, right? And so we spend time and money to make sure we do this in the world. And so the conferences that we host, we organize and bring together, they're largely, for one, no one in sales and marketing is allowed to do anything in the conference. They're just banned. Maybe they're allowed to stand outside the door or something.
Take a picture.
So it's entirely run by the product teams.
Very good.
And what they're doing is like the first thing you're doing is you have an education function. The second thing you're doing is you have a feedback function. You need to seek feedback, right? And when we find like asking the market or asking the industry to come to events like that where you're not being sold to, you're coming because you want education and you want to become part of these things, right? So how do you create a brand and an image where people want to become part of the change rather than being changed, right? So you're not selling, I'm going to come and change you, but you want to come to me and be part of this change that we will drive together. Complex messaging, but that's the path we're on.
It's about making them realize that they need to change something or understand.
Yeah, and that they have the power to do so now.
Yeah. Okay, what are as a co-founder and CEO, what are your thoughts on leadership and team buildings?
Wow, you literally read my mind. But I was going to say culture instead of team building.
What is my thoughts on leadership? Leadership is largely about making sure that your team feels like you can trust them and that your role is servant to them. So one of my kind of like frequently asked questions to my direct reports and almost anyone else in the company is there anything, what can I do to help you, right? And that's not just like a end of the meeting, is there anything else you want to add? It's like the heart of it, right? And there's no such thing as grunt work. I very religiously do what many people tag as grunt work. And it's always done out of, I'm doing the work that needs to be done so that we collectively do the work that needs to be done. And I am not above you. I am servant to you. So I can't remember who created the phrase, but the servant leader has stuck with me for a long time. There's also a bunch of books like Leaders Eat Last, maybe the Simon Sinek one.
Ken Blanchard, maybe?
Perhaps, yeah. I'm very bad with remembering authors' names.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so, throwing away many of the dispositions that you see inside large corporations where the leader is the executive that makes the decision, or the leader is the person that, will only do that type of work, and just bring everything to, we're all real people that do real work. Nothing is above me. Nothing is above you. And the reality is that's just what most of the work is like in a startup, right? I don't get to sit inside executive boardrooms all the time and make fancy decisions. And so don't allow that illusion to be created.
Maybe one more each. We've got 5 minutes or so.
I've got one more thing, just maybe on culture.
Yeah. Sure.
So the story to tell here is that we were 5 people at nPlan. It was June 2018. And it was actually Alan's idea. And I was like a bit moany and grumbly about it. And Alan was like, let's spend the next 3 days thinking about our culture. I was like, what are you on about?
You were supposed to be CTO.
Yeah. I was like, man, we've got like so many things to do right now. And you want to spend 3 days thinking about our culture. And we spent 3 days thinking about our culture. But what it did was it wasn't about what we wanted to be and what we aspired towards, but just who we are. Like, who are we right now? There's no aspirations inside culture. It's just like, who are you right now? And this real depiction of we are grounded, straight talking, honest, caring people, right? It's like some fundamentals of who we are just between Alan and I. And actually, those are the things that really matter to us because that's how we operate. So selfishly, we just want to operate in the same way for a long time and drive that really hard. And if you meet anyone else from nPlan or anyone who's been through the nPlan interview process, they should all very consistently tell you about how religiously we interview for and implement culture. Recently there was unfortunately an employee at nPlan that was we asked them to leave a few weeks after they joined. That was a culture decision, right? Like where we were like, we messed up, man. We just didn't see that culture flag at the interview, but on the grounds of culture, this is not going to work. And that's very shocking to people, right? They're like, whoa, but I'm performing well. It's like, oh, yes, you are. You're performing really, really well, my friend.
Yeah.
But we just, can't take this kind of risk inside this company. So, don't just talk about culture, but practice it, believe it. Because if it's who you are, it's not going to be hard. It's just dead shit easy, actually. Practicing who you are should be the easiest thing you do.
Yeah.
I was going just to ask about the talent, but you kind of explained that the culture is alignment with the culture is very important, right? Are you looking for anyone right now?
Yeah, 4 different roles right now.
What are they?
Podcast
Great
hosts.
question. Yeah. You mean, are we recruiting?
Yes. Oh, this is not from this. This is
No, that's who our users are.
Oh, sorry.
We're recruiting folks.
I recruit this guy.
fired.
We're recruiting in business development, so in a junior sales role, so good at talking to people, good at explaining complex products, and customer success or customer services. So those are not young, they could be any age. They could be people with a few, not many, years of experience in the construction sector that knows that they understand the sector, but they're just really good at empathizing with people. So we're looking to grow that team right now.
Brilliant.
Sounds good. Quick fire one. How much weight do memes add to your culture? How important are memes to the culture?
Oh,
Because Alan is like
Alan is big on it. I'm not. Okay. I think it's like Alan's organization is big on it, and mine is light.
Huh. What do you think? Is there a key skill that stands out to you that someone needs to succeed? Building a
at nPlan or
company?
generally? Oh, tech company.
General, yeah. Maybe someone in your position, founder, CEO.
Yeah, growth mindset. So you just have to be an insatiable desire to learn. If you ever think that you've learned enough or you know it all now, you're out.
Forget it. Cool.
How do you do it? How do you learn? Like, what's
curiosity? Just like never accept that you know everything. Always remember your ideas are shit.
Do you bounce back things with someone, or what's your way of
learning?
Of learning, yeah.
Sometimes, but usually it's just like I just ask the simple question. I want to know more. Tell me more. Why is that the case? And 9 out of 10 times you're learning as you listen, and you better bloody listen when you ask the question, right? But yeah, it's just a sense of curiosity.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Dev. Thank you so much.
All right, man.
Yeah. Could you tell our audience where they could find out more about you and nPlan?
Yeah, you can find out more about nPlan on nplan.io, and you can find out more about me
on Bloomberg.
Yeah, you could watch the Bloomberg India video where I got grilled live with no edits. Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
Cool. All right, Dev.
Thank
you so much.
Thank